Hello, it's me again. So, sorry it took a little bit longer and I wanted to just start another video, but it's just been really crazy, especially with school getting ready to take off again. So, my son and I have been running back and forth trying to make sure everything's done and to hopefully get him set up for success for the school year. So, when we left off last week, was roughly right around the time that I tried to shoot my dad, and it did not work. And I'm glad. I'm glad it didn't have, that I didn't have to live with that. Um, it was around 12 when I started babysitting for people in the valley. Like, that was how I could make money and I could get away and escape my dad and the family problems going on at home. And so I had quite a few clients, like a lot. For It's funny to think about it now and to see my kids where I was compared to where they're at, and it's like, holy, holy crap, what a difference. Like at 12 years old, I had my ham radio license. I had first aid CPR, infant CPR, infant first aid. Um, I had my disaster relief license. I could do assessments on any kind of like flood, fire, any kind of damage to a house or property. I could go in and do an assessment and get them people out of there, put them in a hotel, give them vouchers for clothes, food, water, things like that. And I mean, I got an award from Washington State during 1996. It was a huge ice storm that hit the valley and the whole area. And I was the youngest shelter operator that they've ever had. So, and I remember doing it for like, I think I was awake. The longest one was 3 days, 3 days in a row. It just go, 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 go. And I remember, barely remember the drive home from that because I was just like so exhausted, so tired. And, you know, I think that was the first time my dad ever allowed me to just sleep. He wouldn't let anyone wake me up. He wanted me to get the rest, and I think I slept for like 2 days straight after that. But it was amazing. I loved that experience. I loved, helping people. It was, something I was very passionate about. And, over the years, that kind of died away, the ham radio. Yeah, I know. And wanted to keep my license, but unfortunately, things didn't work out that way. And I can always go retake the test and get it again now, so I'm not too stressed about it. But, so yeah, we were very busy kids. Like, he had us going nonstop. If we weren't getting wood for us, we were doing Red Cross fundraisers and just like constantly going. So for me, babysitting was like my escape. And it was a lifesaver for me, an absolute lifeline. And this one couple in particularly were my favorite clients. And they had 4 kids. And the youngest, when I first started babysitting, was 6 months old. And I tell you what, my infant first aid CPR training was, yeah, I needed it. The first day I met these children, the 6-month-old baby got a hold of a piece of plastic and was choking on it when I got there. And I immediately just went straight in, flipped him over, and laid him on my arm and just, got that plastic out. And I remember his mom just looked at me and she goes, "You're hired. Like, done. You're part of the family. Thank you so much for saving my son." And that family was, I would have to say, as a child, they are the ones who threw me a lifeline and kept me from losing my mind. And they were awesome. They would call and say they would need me to babysit when they didn't, just to get me out of the house. I told them what was going on at home. And And that's another thing. I know I'm like rabbit hole, but like, so one thing I still, I know I've stressed this many times on here, is like, everyone knew what was going on at home, and nobody helped. Nobody. And it's still happening to this day. Like, I really do blame the state of Idaho for everything I've had to endure in my life. Because if they would have done their job, if they would have came in, CPS would have looked around, they would have immediately known, oh, this is not normal. And we'd have been gone. And who knows, it could have been a worse situation, it could have been a better. I know for me personally, it was a better. So anyways, back on track. A little rant over. But yeah, they were amazing, amazing people. And I absolutely loved their kids. Their kids were so much fun. So much fun to be around. And we're going to hit a little bit of dark stuff here, and I apologize. And that's another reason why I don't want to name names of this family, because her brother lived with them off and on, mostly on. And he was a lot, I think he was probably like 5 or 6 years older than the mom. So, or, I'm trying to not make it confusing without saying names. So it's really hard. So I think I'll just say Tim, and we'll call the dad Tim, and the mom, I don't know. It's hard to think of a fake name real quick and in a hurry. We'll call her Daisy. Tim and Daisy. Well, her brother, we'll call him Dave. I like to call everybody Dave. Hey, it's Dave, because I can never remember names. But anyway, so Dave was a lot older than Daisy. He was her older brother. And I was 12 years old when I started to babysit for them. And I was already going through hell at home. They were, that house was my sanctuary and my safe place, that place where I could just finally breathe, relax, and be myself. Well, her brother, Dave, decided he was going to start molesting me. And I could already tell, like, I saw the red flags when I first started working for them with him and their daughter. And I was like, something's not right here. But I never was able to, she never said anything to me, and I was never able to prove it. I just know that Dave was molesting me. And in my 12-year-old head, this is literally how I, deducted what was worse. Do I continue to go and babysit and be molested by this guy? Do I call the cops and potentially lose my only outlet to happiness? Or do I not babysit for them anymore, not report it, and go home and deal with the shit at home? Probably not supposed to cuss, sorry. But anyways, and in my head, I deducted that Dave molesting me was 100% better than any of those other choices. And I didn't even realize that until I was in my 40s. And I literally sat there and cried, because I was like, what kind of 12-year-old debates what is worse? No 12-year-old should ever be put in that position. Not ever. Not ever. And neither one of these men have ever been, as far as I know, have been convicted for any of their offenses. And I know personally, for my dad, the state knew. They knew when I was 16 and did nothing. So I'm really, this whole like county, I don't know if it's just this county or if it's the state itself. I really don't know. But it blew my mind to think back as an adult on my childhood and realize like how many people I had told, how many people I had reached out to for help and got zero, nothing. Our neighbors would talk to my cousins and tell my cousins about how horrific things were for us, because they could hear everything that was going on up there in our bus and tent area. And they would literally sit out there and listen to my dad beating the crap out of us, and they could hear us girls screaming for help, for somebody to help us. And not one of those neighbors ever called for help for us or even tried to help us. Nothing. Not a single thing. And that breaks my heart. It makes my stomach hurt to think that there are people out there, whole neighborhoods, whole towns, that know things are happening and not one person steps in and says, yeah, this stops now. We're done. We're not doing this no more. We're not listening to you torture your family anymore. Like, wow. That's all I can say is wow. I know, even to this day, if I hear anybody screaming, I immediately go towards to help, because I know what it's like to be screaming for help and not get help. And so I have made it very, very clear to anyone that lives around me, like, if you need help, if things are happening that shouldn't be happening, let me know. I will help you. So so for years, since 12, from 12 to 16, it was just rolling with the punches, rolling with the abuse, like just trying to get there, trying to hang in and survive all of our trauma, and it's like, I know people, I don't want to be like a cliche, like, oh, your trauma, your trauma, your trauma. It was a life that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. I just wouldn't. It was horrible. And I think at 16, my cousin had told me, one of my older cousins, she goes, Brooke, one day you're gonna marry somebody just like your dad. It's how it works. And that really stuck with me. Like, that hit hard for me. And I was like, oh no. No, 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 no. I will never, ever put myself in a situation like this. No. I don't think so. I think you're wrong. And she's like, well, look it up. And I did, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, holy crap. I was like, from that day on, I had determined in my head that, no, I'm not going to be another number. I'm changing this. This is not how I want to live my life, and I'm not going to marry somebody like my dad, and I'm going to do things differently. I'm going to break that generational curse. Like, it's done. It stops here. And I think the last time my dad really just beat the living crap out of me with that stupid 2x4. Oh my gosh, I was covered in bruises. Like, and it was all over buying with my money ranch dressing for salad. hmm Because my dad didn't like ranch dressing, and we're not rabbits, so we don't eat that crap. So it's not allowed in the house. And I was just blown away. And I told my little sister, because my older sister was old enough now. She was 18. She could leave whenever she wanted, but my dad had her so brainwashed she couldn't even think on her own. But I told my little sister, I'm like, I'm leaving tonight. You should come with me. I'm done. I'm tired of the abuse. And my mom had ran away multiple times, took us kids to women's shelters, and my dad would always find us. Always. Like, we could never get far enough away for him to not find us. And she'd end up just going back. And it was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare. That constant yo-yo. Oh, we finally got away. Oh, nope, just kidding. We're back. And he'd be good for like maybe a week tops, and then it was right back to the same old shit. So anyways, I really tried hard to get her to leave with me, but she was so afraid, and I said, well, I'm going. I love you guys. And as soon as it got dark enough and I knew, my dad and mom were sleeping, I just grabbed my backpack and left. And I, kind of bounced around for probably about 2 weeks, from friend's house to friend house, mostly people I babysat for, because that's all I really knew. I didn't really know a lot of friends because of how sheltered we were. And finally I'd found out that he had reported me as a runaway and that the police were looking for me. And I'm still covered in bruises from the last beating I got. So I was like, you know what? I finally I'd snapped, and I said, I'm done. And I asked one of, my friends, can you give me a ride to the police station there in Wallace so that I can tell these cops why I ran away and that I'm not going back. And I really wanted to get emancipated because I was like, I was capable of taking care of myself, for sure. And, it was just, and this whole journey through this court stuff was some of the most terrifying things I've experienced in my life. Because for 16 years, we've cried for help, and nobody helped us. So I'm like, here I am, I'm at the police station. They're just going to throw me in a car and take me back, and here we go again. And, they took pictures and everything of all the bruises, and then brought me into an interview room and brought in some CASA workers that kind of like help kind of navigate for the minor through all the governmental, I guess, paperwork and like navigate through this court process. And so, after telling them everything that I'd gone through, and my mom and my sisters, and I told them about the molestation. I never told them about Dave, though, which I still don't know why I never did. Like, I should have, and I don't know why. But in my 12-year-old head, when that first started, it was a lesser of the two evils for me. So I feel like I kind of like metabolized that differently in my brain, and I shuffled that away, and it never really affected me. But the stuff with my dad, that was the main triggers for me. And they put me into a foster care house during the whole like court process of taking my mom and dad to court and trying to get myself pulled from the family and out of the hell. And I remember just begging my little sister to tell the truth, and it never happened. I'll be right back. My door's knocked. Okay. Sorry. Somebody was knocking on my door. So anyways, that was like the CASA worker that was assigned to me. I believe there was 2 of them, and they happened to be a couple. And they literally touched my heart in a place that I can't even express to you in words. They were like my guardian angels, my rescuers. Somebody who finally heard the story and was like, oh my gosh, we got to get her out of there. Like, what the heck, you know? And so it was a big deal for me. And it was really, really hard because I knew I was going to have to go to court. I knew I was going to have to face my dad in person. And I was just terrified, like absolutely petrified of that. Because I can't tell you how many times it was drilled into our heads. If you guys ever leave, if you ever say anything to anyone, I'm going to kill you. So it was like, yeah, we knew what he was capable of, and we knew he wasn't lying. We knew he wasn't joking. Like, I can't tell you how many times he would, you know, him and my mom get into a fight, and instead of it just being them, oh no, we got to get the girls involved. And we'd be up hosting a campground, so we weren't at home, we were out in the wild, out in the wilderness. And he would throw us all into a vehicle and go hauling ass up the roads and find us a huge drop off, like a cliff. And he would jockey the car around so that it's facing the, you know, edge of the cliff. And he would say, I'm done. We're all done. We're all dying right here, right now. I'm going to take us all out. And he's like, you guys better pray and get your hearts right with God. And I remember hearing my mom just begging and begging and begging him, just let the girls out, please, just let the girls out of the car. This is not between them. If you want to kill me and you, that's fine, but just let the girls live. And he's like, no. If I die, they die. And so it was like, I knew it was not an empty threat. He was serious, and he tried to kill my mom a few times, and it just wasn't in the cards for her to die. God kept her alive, God saved her, and it was just like, I believe that with all my heart, because there's no way any of us would have made it out of this sane and alive without some kind of spiritual help. And everyone's allowed. I don't discriminate on people and how they believe and what their beliefs are, because I had religion literally shoved down my throat from day one. So I would never ever do that to anyone else, and I don't think that my beliefs are because of what my parents did. I know that I'm a strong individual, and I'm going to believe how I believe only from experiences. And everyone else has their own experience, everyone else has their own opinions, their own thoughts, and their own religion. So to me, it doesn't really matter whether you believe in God or not. Like, that's your right, your choice. It's not mine. And it's not my place to judge. And it says it in the Bible that you should not judge unless ye be judged. So, it's again, straight, gay, transgender, lesbian. To me, that is your choice, not mine. I can't make your life choices for you. It's not okay. So I don't discriminate on any of that. Race, color, whatever As long as you're a good person. That's all I care. It's like, don't do drama though. I don't do drama. It gets, I've had enough of that. So I know I went off track here. It's hard for me to stay focused. And I know that that's something I struggle with because I didn't even realize I did that until I was in my 40s, when somebody I was dating was like, hey, you really suck at telling stories. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? I love telling stories. I always thought my stories were great. And he's like, well, you never stay on track and it's hard to follow you. And I'm like, oh. So I got, thinking about it and pondering it and pondering and pondering. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's right. I'm like, ooh, shiny thing. Ooh, shiny thing. So I apologize. And that's why I tried to tell you guys at the very beginning, like, more likely I'm going to get off track every once in a while because it's just how my head works. But anyways, so back to 16. I'm going through court, trying to get emancipated and become my own adult, and also face my demon, my monster, and I couldn't do it. Like, I could not sit in the courtroom and face my dad and tell them the horrific things that he had done to me and my family. I was so afraid and so terrified that I ended up having to write a letter to the judge asking him if I could do a video testimony where I can give my testimony privately without my dad being present. And it was embarrassing for me because when I went to write this letter, and my CASA worker was helping me write the letter, I realized how not illiterate, but illiterate I was. Like, I struggled to write this letter, like, with spelling and like punctuation, and how it was horrible. And I was so glad that she was there to help me through that, because I don't know if I could have done it without her. Like, and so what the judge decided to do was, instead of a video testimony, I would give my testimony, but they would take my dad out of the courtroom and into the hallway so that I wouldn't have to physically see him. And I was okay with that. Like, as long as he's not in the room, I'm good. And so we went through that whole process, and I begged and begged my sisters to tell the truth, my mom to tell the truth, but my dad had just pounded into them. If they said anything, he would kill them. And so all three of them were like, would not say anything. And, they just kept pleading the fifth or whatever and wouldn't answer. And in my head, I was thinking, okay, if I get out, they have to pull my sister out, because she's like, if it's going on to me, if they're saying my parents are unfit for me, they definitely are unfit for her too. And so I'm thinking, this will end okay, let's just see how it goes. So we did. And my dad completely made an ass out of himself, like, through the whole court proceedings. He would stand up and interrupt the judge and the lawyers, and she's just a spoiled, rotten little brat. She just needs her ass whooped. Just send her home and I'll beat her ass and everything will be fine. And I was like appalled, like so appalled at his behavior, his comments, and how, he constantly would tell the judge, oh, you're just a bought and paid for judge, whatever you say doesn't matter, you're a loser. And it was insane. Like, what? Who says that in court and doesn't at least get a contempt of court? I know if I was saying things like that, I would have got a contempt of court. But no, not my dad. Nope, he's untouchable is what it felt like. And we finished that up, and I was deemed a ward of the state. They would not emancipate me because of my lack of education. And I understand that because, yeah, it was not, and I still am not where I should have been. Like, I should have been in school, and I'm just still fighting. You know, thank God we have the technology we do today. Like, I got spell check on demand, and it's like, thank the Lord, because my spelling sucks. And there are like a few words that I can't say, and I don't know if it's from my jaw when he beat me up with that board or not and broke all my teeth out. Like, one of the words that I really struggle with is suspific. I just can't. I know what it is. I know, like, I see it in my head. I just can't get it out of my mouth right. And there's a couple other words that I will literally write a whole paragraph to avoid that one word. Like, no, we're not doing that one. It's like, or if I'm talking, I'll still avoid certain words because I can't say them properly. And it's embarrassing, and it like really plays with my head a lot. And you know, I'm 43 years old, and I am still like discovering new things that I had no idea even existed in my head, and the fears and the just trying to get through everything. And when I finally got out of there, you know, my CASA workers ended up getting their fostering license and took me in. And oh my gosh, it was a roller coaster, don't get me wrong, but, and it's because when somebody is raised in a way, and it's like deprogramming. Like, I really do 100% believe, yeah, my dad ran his family like he would a cult. So it was like not just religion, not, you know, it was our whole lives was very, and he controlled everything we did, when we slept, when we ate, when we went to the bathroom, when we showered, when we did anything. So with that, when I got out of that household, I didn't realize how affected I was until the deprogramming started, and realizing, you know, holy cow, you know, it didn't really hit me until after I was out of there. And I know my foster parents really struggled a lot with me because it was like, my dad was deaf in one ear. So I grew up yelling as talking, not my kitten back there is trying to catch a sky raisin. Hopefully she gets it. But it's just, you know, every time I had to go to the bathroom, every time I wanted to take a shower, I'd always ask them, and it would frustrate the shit out of them. They're like, Brooke, stop asking if you can go to the bathroom. Just go to the bathroom. You don't have to ask here for food. You don't have to ask for a shower. You don't have to ask to go to bed. You don't have to ask for anything. Like, just do it. Feed yourself. Go to the bathroom. Bathe yourself. Like, this is what we want you to do. So it took, oh my gosh, I want to say almost 2 years before I felt like somewhat adjusted into real life living. I ended up going to an alternative school because in the state of Idaho, you don't have to turn in credits for homeschooling. So being 16 and not having any credits, the highest grade they could put me in was the 9th grade, and I was almost 17 at that time too. So I was like, oh hell no. I am not going to be a 9th grader and be 17 years old. We're not. No, I'm not. Not putting bullseye on my back. No. I've been through enough. I don't need any more. So I decided to go to an alternative school there in Wallace, which was good and bad. Um, I don't know why, because I was so shy and like reserved from, because I just went through some of the most traumatic things, and now here I am, 16, almost 17, going into an alternative school with quote, quote, the other bad kids, which I would never say that an alternative school is because you're a bad kid, because it's not. It was not like that. The kids that I went to school with, they just struggled with their own personal learning disabilities, how they learned, how they functioned, their own shit that was going on at their own houses. And because I know I wasn't alone, I know that for a fact, this whole valley, this whole world's full of messed up people like my dad. And it just breaks my heart to hear stories about people who've gone through similar things and like got no help. And it's like, why, and then I hear all the stories where people like get their kids taken away all the time over stupid things. And I'm just like, this makes no sense. Like, everything's messed up. But I enjoyed it. I loved it. I loved going to school, except for a few of the girls there decided that I was the new person to target, and so I was getting jumped a lot. And little did they know, I grew up splitting wood and getting wood my whole life. You live with a logger and not know how to split wood. Oh, hell no. So I was not weak, and obviously was not this thick either. Like, I was in shape. I was in my prime. Like, I could arm wrestle anyone and probably kick their butts. And I actually got into a wood splitting competition because of my mouth at school. But anyways, after a few times being beat up, or trying to be beaten up, I, like, this switch went off in my brain. Like, okay, it's time to figure something else out. Like, we need to come up with a game plan. I'm sick of girls trying to think, oh, this is the new person. This is the one we got to go after. We got to assert our dominance. And I just wanted that persona of like, don't F with me. I'm serious. I've been through enough. I'm done with your drama. I'm done with the games. Like, I don't know what's going on. Why do you guys think that I'm the one to beat? Like, we need to, like, end this. So I did. I, like, switched to my, I guess, a different personality of, like, how I carried myself. It wasn't that I, like, changed people. I just, like, changed the way I thought. And it saved my life, like, as even in my adult life, to have that I'm a badass. I could do this. I could take on anyone, anything, and I will survive this. Like, I'm not something for someone to mess with. And so I did. I carried myself like that, and I've always been a very brutally honest person. Like, I don't care what you think, because that's your opinion. And just like everyone else, we all have an asshole and it all smells. So pick the one that you can tolerate the most. I just don't see the need to cover up and to lie and to stretch the truth and to make other people, live in their delusions. Like, if I see something and I don't like it, or I know it's wrong, I'm going to say something. It's who I am. It's how I am. End of discussion. And, sometimes I cuss more than I should, but it is who I am. Like, and if you can't handle that, then that's not my problem. It really isn't. And, I know that I've had people tell me all the time, oh, when you cuss like that, it just makes you look trashy. And I'm like, I just don't give a crap. I don't. Like, I'm trying to enjoy my life and make it through it how I can make it through it. And this is my way of getting through it. Like, that's my stress relief. It's how I relieve relieve a lot of the stuff going on in my head, and it's like, I can't, I know I'm not everyone's cup of tea. I know that. I'm not trying to be everyone's cup of tea. I'm just trying to make it my life easier and hopefully help somebody else in the process and not drag people down. Like, I just don't like that. I don't like it when I see and hear people doing that, where they're just picking on each other and picking apart everything about them, and it's just like, no, that's unnecessary. Why are you doing this? So anyways, being with my foster family was epic. It was wonderful. And then when I turned almost 18, I decided I wanted to go into the military. So then we had the military recruiter come out. My dream was to be a sniper, like, straight up. I wanted to be G.I. Jane, but more badass. And he come out and talked with me, and I had some, like, deformations in my knees when I was born, and they had to put braces on my legs. And due to that, it changed the way I should have developed, I guess. And he flat told me, he goes, the recruiter's like, there's no way they're gonna let you in, not with the medical issues. He's like, you're gonna have to be on your feet for long hours and all da 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 da. And I was like, I couldn't understand, because I was a kid and I never played any different. I was actually one of the fastest runners in my school, so I couldn't understand, like, why, like, if I'm functioning just fine now, and now that I'm 43 years old, let me tell you what, he was right. So I was heartbroken. That was a dream completely just gone. So then I decided I would do a trade school, and I went into Job Corps. And I was going to be a truck driver. I wanted to drive trucks. It was like, something my dad did, so we grew up around it, and I enjoyed it. Like, it didn't scare me. I was like, yeah, heck yeah. Just travel the world, see the world, and get out of this valley. That was like where I was thinking with even just being the truck driver, is, just to get away. I just wanted away from all of it, away from everything. And that didn't happen. Instead, they had a waiting list that was like 8 months for the CDL, the truck driving classes. So I switched careers, and I decided that I was going to do culinary arts. And I thrived at it. I was a great cook. I got my sous chef license. I got a chance to go to Treasure Island. I did not go. And in San Francisco, I had met now the father of my children in Job Corps. And so I thought it was best to not do the advanced course and to just stay, where we were at, going through Job Corps. And then when I got out before him. I kind of hung back and rented an apartment and worked at a restaurant, the 5-star highest paying restaurant there. And just kind of like started my life. I was not in the valley anymore. I was away from all the dramas, away from all the pain, the agony, and I was trying to still stay in contact with my mom and my sisters, and all I was getting from them was, scriptures and Bible verses about what a sinner I was, and I was the prodigal daughter, and I knew it was all my dad. It was not my family. That was my dad talking to me through them. And eventually my mom and my little sister left him and went to a women's shelter up in Sandpoint, Idaho. And it was, I had not seen my dad since court. And that was like almost 3 years had gone by. And I was, chucking away at my job, working, getting prep ready for that day for the restaurant to be opened up. And I remember I told my mom that I never told her where I worked because I knew my dad, he'd get it out of her. So I didn't even tell her where I lived. Like, she knew the town I lived in, but she didn't have an address. And I just did a P.O. box because I didn't want them to know my address. And that was hard for me, to not be able to share these life moments, like when Chris proposed to me, and like all these life events that you share with your sisters and your mom and your dad. And it's like those things were not ever going to happen for me. So it was hard on me emotionally. Like, I really longed for that good family, relationship. And I was getting older, and it was rough. It was rough in my head. I remember having many breakdowns like over it, and Chris really stepped in and helped me out through that. He was the sweetest man I'd ever met. It was the funniest thing I've ever, like, when people ask how we met, that was the best. Because it was my first day of Job Corps when getting on center, and this Job Corps center had 4 dorms, and only 1 dorm was for women. The other 3 dorms were all men. So the ratio from men to women was not, it was insane. It was insane. And they, like, the dorms are down here. Well, when you first come in, it's way up here. So they do the orientation, and then they walk you guys down the road. And you've got the 3 men's dorms that we, us girls, have to walk by to get to the girls' dorm down at the very end. And the whole time we were walking down, like, all I could hear was all these guys screaming and whistling. Oh, look, fresh meat, yay! I'm like, from a little tiny town, and I'm like, what? Like, this is terrifying. But then I'm like, nope, tuck that pussy away. Like, not private parts, like that chicken of being afraid. Like, nope, we need to put on a brave face. We're gonna take this, we're gonna get done. I want this and this out of this. So we're gonna put my nose to the grind, and we're gonna get this done. And I'm not gonna get distracted by any of the drama here. And I did. I whooped ass. Like, it was, I got my high school diploma through them. I got my culinary arts. And then I met the father of my children there. And how I met him. First day of Job Corps. And they take us down to our dorm. They introduce us to the dorm chief. And she's kind of like walking us through the dorms, like, this is what our daily lives are like, this is what you're allowed to do, this is what you're not allowed to do, this is your room, this is your bunk, your closet, da-da-da-da. Get settled in. The smoking area, if you smoke, is under the gazebo out front, like, and then they had pay phones there, and they had pay phones for each dorm. So, it was a lot of information very quick. And so I'm trying to follow along, and yes, I smoke. Get over it. It is the one and only bad habit I have, and I know it's bad for me. I don't need people to tell me it's bad for me. It's my 5 minutes of just like, I can do this. And I know I don't need a cigarette for that, but I enjoy it, and I'm not going to discuss it. It's not on the table. Just leave me alone about it. I'm working on it. I know it's something I need to work on. So anyways, so I was standing outside smoking a cigarette. And perfect timing to cough, right? Yeah, there you go. Smoker's cough. It's best. Not. I never want anyone to start smoking. It is the worst thing you could ever do. But anyways, I was smoking a cigarette, talking with the dorm chief, figuring out what's right, what's wrong, what's allowed, what's not allowed, where we go on the center, and all of a sudden somebody grabbed my ass. And I mean, I reacted like that. I spun around and I punched the first person, the closest person, and it happened to be Chris. So he was the dorm chief of the dorm right next to mine. And one of the boys, the other kids, dared him to grab my butt. And he did it. And I punched him right in the friggin' eye. Gave him a big, huge, gnarly black eye. And I was like so proud of that black eye. I was like, that's what you get, you know, you don't touch me. Like, what the hell? It's like, I'm going off about this. And, you know, I never talked to him again after that because I'm like, this man assaulted me. Like, no, I'm not. Like, you're a piece of crap. And I think it had been like 3 or 4 months had gone by, and him and I started talking more and then hanging out more, and then we were together, and then it just, we never left each other, and we were together for 12 years, so like over 12 years. After dating for 2 years, we got married, and even the wedding was a shit show because even at that time, like, my relationship with my parents were kind of still iffy because I was an adult, you know, at that time, and I didn't care, you know, anymore. My dad could say what he wanted, do what he wanted, but it wasn't going to affect me because I'm an adult. I'm in control of my life now. And it helped having Chris with me because Chris was that other, like, support for me, and my dad wouldn't, you know, he respected Chris enough to not get too crazy with when he was around. So I slowly eased back into their lives, kind of let them back into my life. And it was nice because we lived in Washington and they lived in Idaho. So there was a lot of space between us, and it kind of was like the only way I could really have a relationship with my dad is definitely long distance. But you know, we were married for 2 years before, you know, we decided, okay, let's throw some kids into the mix. Yeah. And our firstborn was Samantha, and she was born in March of good Lord, 03. And then 2 years later we had Gracie, and then our baby 4 years after Gracie was our son Caden. And by that time, Chris and I had some severe ups and downs in our marriage, and I wish now that I wish I would have known what I know now. It was I'm gonna have to end this because going into my marriage with Chris was just like, that one's a rough one for me. Like, I just miss him. So it's gonna be really, really hard for me to talk about this. But the next video I will go over my marriage with Chris and the father of my kiddos, and explain a little bit more of why the frick I'm crying. But anyways, thank you. I need your support. Please help me like, follow, share, subscribe. I just need to get my story out there, and hope and pray that I help somebody else who's going through a rough time in their life to be like, hey, it's not the end of the world. We'll get through it. We'll survive it. So hang on tight. Until next time. Bye.